It started like any other day in the hills of Galilee. In 2001, a family from the nearby town of Rena was taking down trees to make room for a gas station. It was loud, the ground shook, and then there was quiet. Under the blade of the bulldozer, the ground had broken up to show a hollow space. Strange pieces of stone were cut, shaped, and strewn around inside, like the remains of a workshop that had been forgotten. It wasn't a burial cave or an old basement that they had found. No one thought they would find it in the ground in the fields of Nazareth. When researchers from the Israel Antiquities Authority, led by Dr. David Amit, got there, they saw proof that stopped them in their tracks. There were straight cuts, deep grooves, and round marks on the inside walls of the hole that didn't look like they were made by natural weathering. Within hours, they had counted hundreds of stone cores, which are smooth spheres cut from solid chalkstone. They were all the same smooth ring-shaped shape, like a drill or machine had spun them against the rock. But there were no robots 2,000 years ago. It showed a level of building skill that shouldn't have been possible in the 1st century BCE. Whatever it was, the team looked at every part of the place for 3 days. There were no graves, markings, or decorations. Instead, there were tools, broken pieces of pottery, and clear signs of mass production. It wasn't a shrine. It was a factory that was carved out of the rock by careful working people. Even the most knowledgeable experts were confused by the find because it suggested technology that was very different from what people in rural Galilee were thought to be able to do. It shocked his peers when Dr. Jonathan Adler looked at the facts and came to a conclusion. This wasn't just digging for fun. The Jewish workers who built it worked with stone from the late 1st century BCE to the 1st century CE. During that time, there was a small Jewish community in Nazareth. Over 600 broken pieces, like bowls, cups, and jars that were not finished, were found. They were all made from limestone instead of clay. The reason was hidden in Jewish laws about purity. Clay could become ritually unclean and had to be thrown away, but stone, which wasn't addressed in the law, was thought to be unchangeable. Nobody else had ever been able to do what these people did. They built ships out of solid rock and did it very accurately. Every wall in the cave had controlled chiseling marks on it, and the pieces that weren't quite finished looked like they were shaped on an axis that turned. That was old engineering that worked like current machining. Each groove was evenly spread, and each curve was mathematically perfect. The rough edges showed how rhythmic their work was. To shape the stone in this way, the builders must have made a simple lathe that was driven by people. They would have used ropes, pivots, and counterweights to spin the block while chisels cut it down. It turned out so perfectly that it matched the uniformity of pottery made by machines almost 2,000 years later. In a small town like Nazareth, where most people lived in small stone houses and worked as farmers or workers, this level of craftsmanship had no place. It wasn't just any locals who carved this quarry. They were master builders who had a deep understanding of geometry, rotation, and balance. The find showed that there was more to Nazareth than meets the eye. Historians thought it was a poor and unimportant village, but this spot showed that people in the area were very good at high-tech things. Even though these weren't huge buildings or monuments, the work that went into them required the same strength, planning, and accuracy as megalithic construction. Even though these stone cups were smaller than pillars, they held the same mystery. How could people with only simple tools have made something so perfect? With each new measurement, the problem got harder. The cuts were all the same, the surfaces were as smooth as glass, and the alignment was perfect. There was no randomness in the knife marks, even when looked at under a microscope. The person who made them used a technique that was almost perfect in terms of how it worked. But no one had ever talked about this kind of technology from this time or place. It looked like these old builders had learned something about stone that no one else knew. The way historians thought about Galilee changed after this find. This showed that the people living here were not backward farmers, but smart experts who combined their faith with physics. They made stones that were pure. Each vessel from this quarry was both a religious tool and a scientific marvel. They were a unique blend of faith and skill that no one could have imagined. Researchers found more questions as they looked into the spot. How many more quarries like this one were hidden under the hills of Nazareth? Did these builders learn their skills in the area, or were they part of a larger group that supplied vessels for purity all over Judea? What happened to this secret business when the rules against impurity were no longer in effect? The Reyna Quarry is a quiet contradiction, a small cave that holds proof of huge skill. There were hands that could make rock like clay a long time ago, as shown by the smooth rings on the stone cores. Some experts thought it was so far ahead of its time that they called it megalithic in precision. Anyway, it came from a very small and little-known part of ancient Israel. What else is buried under the ground of Nazareth? This question goes to the next chapter, which is about the builders no one saw. The builders no one saw. The camera leaves the quarry, which is very still, and goes to Nazareth village, which is full of life from 2,000 years ago. Stone homes, dusty walks, and tools sitting on workbenches are all lit up by the sun. The sound of hammers and saws fills the air, and that noise tells us who did what we thought was impossible. In the Gospels, Joseph is called a builder, but the Greek word tekton has a different meaning. It means builder, as in someone who forms stone and wood. That skill was very valuable in the hills of Galilee. Everything here was made of stone, from the homes and tools to the holy objects used for purity. Chips and picks used by these builders are the same ones that were found deep in the Reyna Quarry. The two are exactly the same. There is the same design in every groove, ring, and cut in limestone. The person who made those objects of purity lived in this world, the tekton world. These were not wealthy craftsmen who worked for royal churches. They came from quiet places like Nazareth and worked as builders in different towns. They fixed walls, carved beams, and cut stone blocks. Some people may have walked from Nazareth to Sepphoris, which was just a few miles away and was a busy building site under King Herod's rule. They would have seen how wheels, levers, and pulleys were used in big projects and new ways to build things. They took those thoughts with them when they went back home. They combined engineering from the city with devotion from the country to make tools that worked like extra hands. Every surface inside the Reyna Cave shows how skilled they are. They did more than just cut stone. They also spun it. They turned heavy limestone cores on lathes they made by hand out of wood and rope, while keeping chisels steady against the spinning surface. It only took one mistake to ruin the piece, but they didn't do that very often. Each vessel's wall is thin all the way around, and each rim is a perfect circle. To get that level of balance without using tools, you need to be very smart and practice a lot. When looked at with a microscope, the lines in the stone show a hidden beat. The lines are spread out evenly like they were carved by a machine pulse. This wasn't just random work, it was planned movement. Building in Galilee was done in a way that was hundreds of years ahead of its time. It combined the ideas of the potter's wheel with the power of stonemasonry. They used rotation, friction, and precise pressure on the same item to make the stone as smooth as clay. Each thing they made was more than just a box. What they said was perfect. They cut these pieces not to make them look nice, but to follow the purity law, which said they had to be completely clean. Stone could not be changed, but clay could. These dishes were a promise that nothing dirty could ever touch people who were very set on staying clean. Each bowl and jar was made to last a long time. They were, in a way, turning faith into things. Tekatons did work that was both physical and mental. They knew that every tool stroke was a holy part of something. Their job wasn't to make things look nice for show, but to make things pure for use. Still, they made things that pushed the limits of human craftsmanship without trying to. Each one is a small megalith, just the right amount of force and purpose. Engineers today try to figure out how these builders were able to be so precise with just stone, rope, and muscle. It was dark, and they swung tools around for hours until their hands got blisters. On the other hand, they left behind things that are so similar that some researchers call them non-human. They were human though, just very skilled. Their genius didn't come from machines. It came from their dedication. The fact that Nazareth is known for being poor and quiet hides who these people really were. They were not just workers. They were inventors who came up with a combined technology many years before the Romans made stone-turning machines that worked perfectly. They used faith for something useful and made science into a rite. Their long-lost workshop shows that even a small town can be a place where new ideas are born. That question takes us below Nazareth to the next mystery, the law that made a stone society possible, the law that built a civilization of stone Scrolls from long ago open and close across the screen, and the words written on them glow in a flashing light. The frame is made up of the laws of Leviticus. Every line is clear, and every order must be followed. Not only did these laws about purity shape faith, they also shaped the hands that built a whole society. They told people what to eat, touch, and even how to store their food. It was said that clay, which is used in everyday life, was fragile. It could take in dirt, and once it was dirty, it had to be broken. The writing didn't say anything about stone, though. The key was silence. People thought that what the Torah didn't say was wrong was safe. Everything changed because of this one gap. If clay could be tainted, but stone couldn't, then stone became holy by leaving out clay. A whole new business started because of that small hole in the law. Craftsmen started digging up chalkstone to make dishes that would never get dirty. Every cup and bowl was made holy so that the practices of washing, eating, and offering sacrifices could go on without stopping. Reina's quarry wasn't just a place for work, it was also a place where religion was carved into the ground. Based on what Dr. Jonathan Adler found, this was not a small surgery. Workers had to dig deep into the ground and follow veins of white stone through layers of old rock to get to the perfect limestone that was needed for purity vessels. They did not leave behind rough tunnels in the rooms they left behind. With great care, the walls were shaped to look like small temples with smooth, curved edges. There was discipline and order in every pick mark. The removal was done in a way that looked almost mathematical. It wasn't just mining, it was the actual translation of what people believe. The design became clearer as the archaeologists looked more closely. Stone vessels were only found in Jewish communities. They were never found in Samaritan towns or the big Hellenistic cities of the Decapolis. There was a clear split. These things were ways to show you who you were and how much you followed Moses' rules. They lived in the homes of both monks and regular families, and they brought everyone together around the same idea: permanence through purity. Think about how that world would beat. Every morning, people were aware of limits that they couldn't see. They washed before they ate. They checked their pots before they prayed. At the market, they tried to stay away from people who might not follow the same rules. The question, "Am I clean?" was with me all the time. There were water jars by the door. In the light of the lamp, the stone cups sparkled, letting their owners know that nothing evil could touch what they held. This constant awareness changed more than just habits. It changed trade, design, and new ideas. Builders had to come up with new tools and techniques to make ships that couldn't be damaged. Technology moved forward because of purity. It wasn't about making money for the quarrymen of Reina. They were protecting faith. Their underground world turned into a secret network of makers who were all working toward the same goal: making stone a way to keep sin away. Researchers learned more about how big this network had to be as they dug deeper. Each pit was linked to others in Galilee, and each workshop repeated the same rules in different ways. Places where faith and skill met included farms, homes, and behind city walls. These all had the same stone dust. Nazareth was no longer just a quiet, quaint town. A network of tubes and quarries was built above it, but not for trade or defense. They were built for purity's sake. These rules changed more than just how people lived. They also changed the ground they stood on. And if faith could carve something this strong into the ground below a town, what else could be down there? That question takes us deeper into the ground, to the network of tunnels that are still hidden under Nazareth. The hidden network beneath Nazareth. As the camera moves above the quiet darkness of the Reina quarry, it looks out over the hills that ring Nazareth. From above, it looks calm. Olive trees, narrow roads, and white stone houses stuck to the sides of the hills. That calm surface hides something very strange, though. Archaeologists were shocked by what they found when they mapped the area with LiDAR and ground-penetrating radar. There was a huge web of holes under the lower Galilee that could not be seen. They led to tunnels and rooms that were made of limestone. It seemed like there was only one class at first, but then it became part of a bigger network. Reina's marks can be found in every newly mapped room. The depth and rhythm of the lines are the same, and the color and makeup of the debris fields are also the same. The rocks are all on the same base of chalk limestone, which is soft to work with, but strong enough to last. There is no chance in this quarrying It shows that teams work together, following the same stone lines and shaping it with the same tools to reach the same goal. The network wasn't a bunch of separate projects, it was a system. Some of these mines are right below where Nazareth is now. They are now covered by streets, churches, and homes. Over hundreds of years, constant building covered up the holes that used to lead underground. The world below, though, stayed the same while the world above changed. In the ground below the city, there is a map of its earliest industries that has been kept. Chisels used to be able to be heard cutting through the stone. There is a clear trend that scholars like Jonathan Adler and Jody Magnus see. During the Roman and Byzantine periods when the city grew, new buildings hid the old quarries. Each new base shut off a different part of the old world. The Nazareth of today is built on top of that forgotten layer, which is a memory of the builders who shaped the faith and business of the area. The finding makes historians rethink who Nazareth really was. It used to be thought of as a small, unimportant town, but now we know it was actually a specialized production center that sent building materials and vessels for purity to the rest of Galilee. Its craftsmen probably worked for the nearby, busy city of Sepphoris, making the same precise stonework that priests and traders used in their homes. The picture of a quiet country town hides the plan of a well-organized, technically savvy community. The craftsmanship in these secret quarries is almost impossible. Some walls have cuts that are exactly round and smooth, polished to a fine shine. The chamber's symmetry is so perfect that archaeologists compare it to megalithic buildings, which were built with huge stones and only hand tools. The builders must have used rotational leverage systems that we still don't fully understand, because they were able to cut and align blocks that weighed several tons with amazing precision. The network that was hidden under Nazareth is more than just an interesting discovery. It shows that a town that didn't seem important was actually the birthplace of ancient dedication and engineering. Proof that faith and drive can shape even stone into perfection can be found under its streets. The next question is about the proof that no one saw coming and the impact that can still be heard in Nazareth stone. The evidence. No one expected. The screen is full of old Hebrew writings carved into rock. On each slab are the names of families of priests who used to work in the Temple of Jerusalem. One word stands out from the rest: Nazareth. These writings, which were made between the 3rd and 6th centuries CE and were found in Galilee and Caesarea, show where the religious courses went to live after the temple was destroyed in 70 CE. Nazareth's inclusion is more than just a name on a stone. It's proof that the town existed long before many historians thought, going back to the time of the Hasmoneans. This new information changes the schedule. In other words, Nazareth wasn't built by Christians later on. It was a busy Jewish settlement hundreds of years ago, where families lived a holy life. These were the same priestly families that wanted vessels that could never be dirty, and these were the same groups that used math to figure out how to apply the rules of Leviticus. It's not a stretch to think that these people watched over, paid for, or even ran the workshops that were buried under Nazareth. Now, the stone vessels found in the Reina quarry don't look like random artifacts. They look like the work of a community whose foundation was on faith and purity. So Nazareth might not have been just a small town. It may have been a ritual industrial complex where faith and work came together. The secret quarries were like factories for holiness. They made cups, jars, and bowls out of stone that showed how much priests cared about keeping things spiritually clean. The clean, precise, and perfect way of life was shown in every groove and circle carved into those dishes. Priests saw what other people saw as routine work, as worship in action. Scientists who study archaeology call this a coincidence. It's what theologians call fate. Any way you look at it, the purity rules, the priestly settlements, and the impossible accuracy of Nazareth stonework all connect to make a perfect triangle of proof.